this episode, I talk with director, producer, Lawrie Brewster. You may know him from his films Lord of Tears, The Vance Institute, and The Devil's Machine. Not only is Lawrie a great director and producer, but he also runs BritishHorrorStudios.com, which I highly recommend you check out, especially if you're an old school British horror fan. Definitely want to check that out. Had a great time talking with Lawrie, and I hope you enjoy this episode. After you're done with this episode, make sure you check out my fellow horsemen of the podcast Apocalypse, Everything Went Black podcast, Into the Necrosphere, the Necromaniacs podcast, Break the Apocalypse, Iblis Manifestations, and the Soul Knocks podcast. And also, don't forget, if you dig what I do, leave me a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform you use, and follow me on social media. Horrorwolf666 on Instagram, same on Twitter, same on Facebook, Horrorwolf666. Appreciate that, and thanks so much for listening.
Hey, Brandon, thanks, man, for this. And sorry about the first time as well, just with everything being so bloody crazy. I got screwed up with our dates and times, so thanks for giving me another opportunity to come on and talk to you.
Oh, it's no worries, and I want to thank our mutual friend on Twitter, Hal Weaver, for hooking this up. So that was really awesome, introducing us,
Yeah, Hal's awesome. It's really nice, supporter. I mean, I had been so insular on Twitter until relatively recently, until last 6-7 months, and now just kind of opening up and talking about what we're doing. It's great because we're getting to meet folks like Hal, and I just really appreciate people supporting what we're trying to do and trying to open it up so more people can get involved as well.
Yeah, it's great. Social media is really good for that. It can be really bad or it can be really good. And I think the stuff that you do, the stuff that I do, the stuff that Hal does and everything with the sharing of really good horror, good positive messages and stuff. I think that's a really good part of social media,
Yeah, that's right. Instead of using it for the forces of darkness.
Yeah, and you can definitely, if you want to go that route in the force of darkness there, you can surely find it on Twitter, because Twitter is pretty fucking crazy.
It totally is. In some ways, I hadn't used Twitter for ages, right? Because it was just every time I went on there, it was just people trying to annihilate each other, cancel each other, destroy each other. And I mean, that still is the case to an extent, but at the moment, I don't know. It seemed like there was a little bit less of that. I don't know if it was maybe to do with, algorithm stuff. They just show me different things. But whatever it is, it just seemed like, okay, I'll give it a shot. In fact, maybe that was more a reflection of the horror community on Twitter, because it seems like recently more folks that are posting on Twitter are just regular horror folks or fans, whereas before, it only seemed like a kind of clique that was, again, just only talking about politics and not about horror movies,
Yeah, I totally see that. The horror community and stuff on Twitter is really good and supportive and stuff. And it's not cliquey like it used to be. When I first got on Twitter, it was kind of cliquey, it was this is kind of weird. But now it's kind of open and stuff. And it's cool because the people that are on Twitter that's in the horror community, Facebook, even TikTok, which I recently joined for the podcast, which I was really hesitant of doing, but I'm on TikTok with the podcast now, which is weird. But anyways, it seems like we all flow in the same directions there. I see people from Twitter on Facebook or on Instagram, it's really cool. It's a good way of staying connected,
Oh man, yeah, totally. I kind of, excuse me, Brandon, I'm taking my belt off. I know this sounds quite erotic, but been walking all day in this thing. Come on, belt. There we are. It's a good job it's not a video call now. So, what would you like to focus on your on our chat?
Let's go over there's a few things I definitely want to go over with you. I wanted to start off by first talking about your awesome film, Lord of Tears, which is
good. Yep.
It's great. And, it's been out since I think 2013, but I still think it's kind of under the radar with a lot of people, and they're really missing out. It's a really awesome hidden gem,
Oh, thanks, man. Cheers.
Yeah. How did that? How'd you get started with Lord of Tears? Like, where'd the idea come from and stuff?
So, oh man, right? It feels like 1,000 years ago, and yet it's the memory of making that film, developing it, is still one that is close to my heart. It's filled with like positive feelings. It's probably not actually. I was about to say a bit like the making of the original Evil Dead, though they're behind the scenes, make it a very traumatizing experience. But but filled with that kind of indie filmmaking spirit, that positive sense of like adventure and trying to achieve something new. Um, Now, after a film I had produced and directed called Whiteout, which was a very, very modest project that was kind of dystopian, kind of horror related, but was one that we'd done on a very small scale. We'd made a little bit of money on that and decided to throw all the chips on black, which was to produce our low budget horror feature film.
Mhm.
And at the time with Lord of Tears, um, it was like even just the idea of renting a mansion for a week was like going to blow the budget. And getting a team of people, like about a dozen of us, going out there into this mansion that's on a little island off the coast of Scotland in the middle of nowhere. It was like really romantic, and traveling there through the Highlands, through this kind of like, even for me as a Scotsman, it's like an alien world whenever I go to the Highlands. It's ancient. It's like the world that at its most ancient. And
Mhm.
so there's always a sense of wonder when you go there. And knowing at the end of this journey was this kind of dilapidated, crumbling mansion where we're going to produce a horror film that tries to bring back to life the visage of this ancient spirit, this antagonist of our film, the Owl Man. And all of that, I remember like before we were shooting it at New Year's, we had our actress Alexandra Nicole Hume was visiting us in
Mhm.
Scotland from the States, and we're all sitting there thinking like, you know what, we have to make this film. Me and Sarah, we were like, we have to do this. And it was with the spirit of adventure that we decided to go for it. So Sarah wrote it, and when we were coming up with the idea of the Owl Man, at the time we were all, me and Sarah, we always work in collaboration with our films, as a producer, as a writer and director, and we kind of mixed duties up a bit, really, more than what the credits would themselves express.
Mhm.
Um, but anyway, we're like thinking, what the hell is this antagonist going to be? And we went through different ideas, but the thing that always inspired us was the idea of an immortal stalker with roots in ancient history. Because I myself had been a student at St Andrews University of ancient history and theology, the history of religions, and so I was always fascinated by that kind of stuff, and so was Sarah. And from that influence, we found Minerva's owl, which was a kind of entity that looked like an owl, sometimes depicted in the St. James Bible as a kind of owl headed, sword wielding demon. And we were like, that's awesome.
Mhm.
And then we were other gods of child sacrifice and all these kind of things like Moloch and things. And eventually we came across the famous statue at Bohemian Grove, the secret society in the United States for rich folks to have fun.
Mhm.
But to make it even more exciting, let's erect a 100-foot stone statue of an owl as depiction of Moloch.
Right.
And normally depicted as a bull, but this time depicted as an owl. And it just made us think, you know what? A god of child sacrifice, an uber mofu owl, that that was epic. And as fans of gothic horror and gothic horror literature, um, me and Sarah, we were like, okay, well, let's combine the anthropomorphic depiction of this owl with a Victorian gentleman, in a tail suit.
Mhm.
But let's not make him too neat and tidy so he doesn't look too well groomed. More like someone wearing a kind of poorly constructed human costume. And so that was one of the influences. And one of the other influences was, weirdly enough as well, whilst we were scrambling about with the idea of how we would show our Owlman, was a Victorian Christmas card design that showed a number of animal-headed people with, and it was weird. There was like a bird, and there was a guy like with a jumper with an owl's head, and they all had antlers, and that as well just made us go like, yeah, that was cool. So those were the kind of things that influenced, but there were other ones as well, like in terms of the immortal stalker, we always quite liked the kind of mythology of the Slender Man from creepypasta a bit.
Mm-hmm. Definitely see that.
Yeah, there was like a vibe for that, and there was also because there are so many different influences and inspirations that go into these things. There's a film. Oh, geez, trying to remember the Italian director. Come on, Lawrie. It's rattling on the keyboard. Yeah, Michel Suavi. I'm totally mispronouncing the name. Director of. Now, the British title of the film is Stage Fright, but I think it's called Aquarius in the US, in which that is a slasher film where a serial killer grabs the mask of an owl from a theatre production and starts killing the cast and stage crew that are locked in for the night in a theatre. So there was I think all these things kind of played their part, but I think the film and the Slender Man and these kind of images, they kind of helped us to manifest some of our visual means of expressing what our kind of more academic influences were among ancient religion and history and stuff. So whenever we're coming up with ideas for our films, we're always digging deep in the mythology of what our antagonists are. We're nerds for that stuff.
It's great, and it shows. Another thing that I picked up on with this film is it has a Lovecraft feel to it. The Lovecraftian stuff is always thrown around like everything's Lovecraftian now, but this really feels like, I don't know, it could take place in like a Lovecraft universe, with the gothic feel to it and everything. And I also picked up on some like the weirdness of maybe like David Lynch or something with like the dance scenes and everything like that. I kind of felt Lynchian on top of that too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, to come to H.P. Lovecraft first, I've always enjoyed the horror literature of H.P. Lovecraft, and in addition, other writers such as Henry James and M.R. James, and of course Edgar Allan Poe, of that era, and of course there are plenty of others as well. And what I always liked about Lovecraft's work in particular was I guess what we know as the cosmic horror aspect, but himself, he was, heavily or completely influenced and inspired by Gothic horror, but he managed to bring his own aspect to it. So having this otherworldly element that almost, for me, when I first discovered Lovecraft, felt like a kind of mysticism, this kind of unique sneak peek into another world. That was different about Lovecraft compared to other Gothic horror writers. And I wanted to try, if possible, to create a subtle aspect of that with Lord of Tears as a nod to Lovecraft. And certainly from the kind of subconscious inspirations he would have given me as a fan of his work.
You definitely nailed that for sure. Like that was like the first thing I picked up on. I'm like, this definitely feels like Lovecraft,
Well, absolutely. And also with regards to Lovecraft, I absolutely enjoy the horror films produced and directed by Stuart Gordon as well, like a horror comic sensibilities. They're great fun. And the absence, though, I think, of British or Scottish perspective as well on Lovecraft, though, I felt was something that was a shame because we come from a different horror tradition. And so it's good to kind of see more films from Britain that are tackling influences and inspirations of Lovecraft as well. So that was fun. And then certainly give it, and of course, serious tones as well. This is something that we do. We like to be depressing across the pond. And you were saying about the dance scenes. This, you got filmmakers like David Lynch, and I guess like there's a bit of me that's quite campy and thespian-y a little bit, coming from the British theatre training background. Because after I did the ancient history and theology, I did theatre for a little while, and it was so shockingly bad that I think I brought the spirit of Puss in Boots to Macbeth. It's pretty much that was the start and end of my career there. But the combination of different art forms that might ordinarily occupy the stage, I was always interested in finding ways to explore that in cinema as well. And Alexandra Nicole Hume, she's a beautiful woman and a super talented woman. As a leading lady, she sparkles in front of the camera, but she is also a wonderful choreographer and dancer. And when she looked at the environment of the ballroom that we were filming in, she was like, I could express the spellbinding nature of my character on Ewan's character to dance. I was like, you can? Great. I'll go have a coffee. And came back and she showed me her routine, and I was like, just film her with lots of cameras. This is magical. And it's the kind of thing as well that British filmmakers like Ken Russell would have done as well. And then he's quite an influential director on me as well. This willingness to kind of use theatrical elements in film, which is not very fashionable at the moment, not as unfashionable as it was, say, 5-10 years ago, though, but not especially fashionable, but absolutely fashionable in 60s and 50s and early 70s cinema, especially British romantic cinema. Because, of course, what's cool at the moment is a guy sitting looking out a window, taking a slow motion vape to a minimalist electronic synth score, with no dialogue for 8 minutes, and then the A24 logo appears. I'm only joking. But you get the idea. You get this, and then one of my films comes along with theatrical camp that could look like it's something out of the Weimar Republic and Cabaret, and it's like, what the fuck's this? It's not trying to be ironic; it's just being it.
Yeah.
So So I love the dance stuff, and geez, man, I tell you. There's always in almost every film I've made, something like that. The Black Gloves had a lot more dance. Devil's Machine had a lot of physical theater aspects to it, and I love that stuff. I love seeing what other artists can bring to my film.
That's great.
Yeah, because it's it's like the director credit. It's good, but it's bullshit. So many people are bringing magic to your film, and it's like I just want to see them shine because it makes the film and the experience of watching it more exciting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's a team effort, and everybody brings something different to the table and really adds to it,
I mean, not to digress, but very briefly, that's why I like trying to build a British horror film studio. It's why I like working and building Hex as our horror production company with a team of people. Because when I can meet them in the morning or day at night when we're working crazy hours, and I see in the eyes the excitement of all our collaborators and tiredness often, and know that we're pulling together to create something bigger and more important than any one of us, then that's why I can feel uncomfortable with the way the credits in film reflect our contributions, especially in independent film, because we have to wear so many hats when you have less people. Like it makes me most excited when people say, you know what, I enjoyed that Hex movie, or that Hex movie was okay.
Mhm.
But like, if folks are like, yeah, Laurie's a great director and stuff like that, it's like that's very flattering. But I'm always like one of the first to say, but you know, it's 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 the Hex that you're thanking, not really me. You know, and I love that. It's so much more exciting to build a studio than an ego. You know, I mean, I'm
And
still an egomaniac, but it's still more exciting. Still a wanker, Brandon, but
that leads me to I wanted to talk about the BritishHorrorStudio.com that you got going on right now, trying to like really build up and stuff.
yeah, the British Horror Studio.com is something I'm very passionate about. It's where folks can sign up to finally now get on our monthly email list, where we're kind of producing an old timey kind of newspaper update on our efforts to create a horror film studio, a British horror film studio. And when I say British, I mean that more in its style and tone. It's very international in terms of its opportunities for those to collaborate with us, especially for our friends across the pond as well, because heck, the studios it takes inspiration from, like Hammerkiss, Hammer, and even Tygon, all relied very much on their transatlantic partners to be a success, and so will this project as well.
Mhm.
Folks can sign up to that, and we recently set up a Facebook group as well called BritishHorrorStudio.com as well. And folks can get, daily propaganda about what the hell we're up to. But also, we're hoping to use that very soon to create opportunities for those who are wanting to get more involved than just, say, like following what we're doing and encouraging us, that want to get active. Like they might want to write things or perform or contribute. And that's where we'll be setting up subgroups eventually, where we can generate videos and text and things like that to develop our plans further. And do you want to know what those plans are, Brandon, or am I jumping the gun?
No, go for it. Tell me those plans.
So, I've worked as a producer, right, for must be 13 years now.
Mhm.
And what can I say, right? The film industry is absolutely, by and large, ruthlessly shit. It really is.
Mhm.
Now, I have seen folks and my fellow peers, people working around my level as producers and stuff like that. If they haven't had their ordinary orifices stretched beyond imagination, they've created new orifices to survive it.
Right.
Eventually, it was like, my God, and things are only getting worse. Now, that might sound a little bit abstract, and for your listeners, I guess the basic point I'm making there is that it is harder and harder for independent filmmakers to survive in the current market environment and the way it's evolving.
Mhm.
It means that folks are getting a lot harder with one another and a lot crueler as well. Now, I kind of felt the writing on the wall was there a few years ago, and although I was doing quite well as a producer, it kind of meant that to be more successful and to sustain my career, I would have to start playing that game and become someone that I would really hate, someone that my partner at the time and friends wouldn't really like. So that's when I decided to set up a production company with Sarah, which is Hex. We call it Hex Studio,
Mhm.
because we wanted to create something that could be a much more positive force. But the challenge, and this is now something that we've developed into the British Horror Studio, and the challenge that it has is to create a truly self-sustainable development, finance, production, and distribution model that can cater to those fans of horror that have a particular interest in the kinds of films it would make. It's not something that is trying to be big across, let's say, all the mainstream platforms, because it's a rigged game of roulette that, no entity like that is going to win. But it can still achieve epic and transformative things. So, for example, we will be looking to secure a number of, which we do with Hex, but across a broader spectrum with the British Horror Studio, producing a number of horror feature films, about 4 a year at least. And in addition to that, securing premises as well, buildings that also reflect the ethos and character of what we're trying to do. And we are at a stage where this might be almost happening. So that's quite exciting.
That's cool, yeah.
So you got the business model, which is this, which largely revolves around crowdfunding, community groups, and really consolidating those that have a passion to get involved. A British horror studio would be a horror studio that is accessible for folks that have an interest in filmmaking as well as horror, with a level of access and egalitarianism, not elitism, that is absent in ordinary film industries, which have much gatekeeping and ways of keeping folks at bay. With a bit different with that. So we have the business model, and we get the billings, we get productions secured. We'd look to have more participants contributing with the story of what we're doing in terms of, it's a terrible word, content for social media. Because what we're effectively looking at is creating a kind of retro horror ecosystem bubble, It's like, what, if you want a break from 2023, come back to 1969 with us and make films with us, have fun with us. We'd also look at events as well. This might be, for example, a film festival and a conference as well. So those are some of the things. And the final element to all that is, and this is quite a romantic thing really, is securing the intellectual property for the use of a legacy name, British Horror Studio or Horror Studio, that we could resurrect as a flagship label for our project and enterprise. So there you go, easy peasy, right?
I think that's fucking great, man. I'm totally down with this, and yeah, I think this is really cool and something that's definitely needed. And a lot of people, as myself alike, we need a break from 2023, and it'd be nice to go back to some old school horror. Like, that's way cool.
I think so as well. I mean, and there's nothing against like modern horror, and it's not that the British Horror Studio wouldn't make films that are, say, contemporary set. It's just that what we would look for is for films that have a much more sympathetic perspective on those produced in the past, that aren't so quick to follow the trends in present day pop culture, It's like that's already determined probably by an algorithm for a social media giant or or a streaming giant now. It's like, what, let's carve out something different and let folks be a bit stranger and a bit more eccentric and see what can get made.
Are you planning on doing like any like a streaming service too at the, like, once all this comes together, like having your own streaming service just for this? Or
I mean, that would be really awesome. I think if money wasn't an issue, then sure, then I would look at basically a subscription type model. Effectively, though, I mean, there are ways that this can be explored on a simpler transitionary basis. Like you could look at, for example, like types of Patreon or apps, that can provide access to all the content that we're making, with the full knowledge that those funds are going towards the sustainability of the project. I'd say that's actually the prime goal, really, for this is the sustainability of it because it's so ambitious. But I think what I would see most likely is us concentrating on the sales of digital downloads, special editions, with like lots of downloadable extras and things. And we are quite passionate about supporting, for as long as it can, physical special edition media as well.
Yeah.
In the form of Blu-ray, and we're even experimenting with VHS as well. And then eventually we'll look at alternative options to Blu-ray as well, that can offer super high bit rate versions of our films and extras for folks that, eventually we'd maybe be digital only if the streaming is so fast that it's literally as good as the Blu-ray. Then we're like, oh no. But then, folks still want something to hold in their hands, In terms of though streaming and subscription, that'd be great. But like honestly, we would need like a high level of cash equity and spend that on acquiring a lot of content. But here's the thing, like, dude, I tell you, man, like, a month doesn't go by, right, where I don't hear rumors of horror streaming platforms, dedicated horror streaming platforms, gritting their teeth and trying to survive, like, on the borderline of, crumbling. Like, even like Shudder, and I'm sure it's in good health at the moment, but like it and others and all those that have come and gone as well, like FearNet and things like that, those are platforms that big companies, like, for example, AMC with Shudder, when they start those things, they throw in millions, to let them build up. And they're all like, okay, let the money roll in. There's a lot of horror fans out there. And then 5 years down the line, it's like,
yeah, that's scary. Yeah, so scary because I love Shudder, and like Screenbox is another really good one that just really started rising up there. I believe I think Bloody Disgusting bought Screenbox, and so Screenbox is like kicking ass right now, them and Shudder. But like I think about that all the time. Like it might not be here next year this time. You know what I mean? Like because the market and stuff is with stuff like that, and very scary.
Yeah, I mean the big challenge for a lot of those platforms is the overheads and the percentages that are given out from royalties to other companies. They're experiencing the problem that is actually the big problem that I was kind of referring to earlier that has affected all independent filmmakers as well. And the problem is simply this: no one is making money in terms of filmmakers on VOD digital. It's just grim as hell. I see sales reports for movies, right? And it's like, we've all been saying physical is dead, right? Even like retail, especially retail physical. Like in the US, you still have DVDs in Walmart. In the UK, like that physical section for movies is almost non-existent, right? And yet still on those sales reports, there must be like, I don't know, like 100 DVDs getting, shelved in the supermarket in the UK, in a store or something. You look at the sales report and it's like, wow, physical's still outselling VOD, but like 8-1, but physical's going down every year and VOD isn't going up, Yeah. So that's the problem, and it is acutely felt by independent film because unlike corporate-owned film production studios, they can't negotiate, for higher splits from the streaming giants. They're just kind of. In fact, most indie distributors are just throwing titles up in a way that filmmakers could do themselves by uploading to it. There's like nothing different or special anymore, and it's just so.
Yeah, and I'm with you when it comes to physical media. I still think physical media is like the best form of it. I love buying special edition yeah, VHSs, Blu-rays, whatever. I have a ton of like really cool shit, and it's to have something to hold in your hand. I think that's really awesome because a lot of these streaming companies, like the real big ones, I think the latest one was like Disney. There's a few. I think what was it, Willow? They redid Willow, the TV series and stuff, and it didn't do well, so they canceled it after like season one. But it decided just like to take it off the service altogether. So now you can't even find Willow if you wanted to go back and watch it. It just came out like last year or so. Like,
Yeah,
they can make shit disappear and you never see it again.
that's right. I mean, we like to make sure folks can own a copy of our film, and even with the digital stuff, we like to offer high quality digital downloads as well. Folks can get them if they've bought the physical; they can just get one as a backup. But we also offer that, and on our store. Plug time, hexstudios.shop. But like on VOD, like yeah, it's like I've rented a film, I bought a film on Amazon, but I guess it's going to stay there. But like, who knows?
Yeah.
Oh man, let me tell you something as well. Since I've been bitching about VOD streaming, because you were, again, it's just all related to like, would you do a streaming platform and all that? I remember back in the day, right? When Amazon got into streaming early on. So our company, we helped with the distribution of a whole bunch of indie films. You wouldn't even know about them because we were just acting as like a sales agent, right? Kind of like a cog in the machine. But there was quite a lot of titles, and we were making a bit of money. And back at the start, a film in the US was getting about 18 cents per hour streamed. So if you think about it, it's like, well, okay, someone watches a movie, they're going to watch a movie for basically 25 cents. It's a lot of people would have to watch a movie to make much money on Prime streaming. And it's pretty hard to market your film. But at least with that amount, it was like, okay, I could see how the distributors could make money because we were making money. For a while, it was like, it's not the main way we make money, but for a while, it was like several thousand a month distributing and just helping to distribute folks' films via Amazon. And then, like about, must have been about 6 months or 8 months later, they were like, we're changing the tariff from 18 cents to 2 cents. And
wow.
I was like, oh, you saw the big, like the Great Depression line in your like analytics from like, oh, fuck. So I remember at the time, I was just like, to a lot of filmmakers, I was just like, here, take your film back. You won't believe me if you see these sales reports. Take it back.
Wow, that's insanity.
And it's only since then it's got worse. It's like I think now it's like 1.3 cents or 1.2 cents or something. But if you're like the guy that owns, say, the original Top Gun, you're not getting paid that every hour. You know what I mean? Like Amazon will cut a different deal with you, and so that's why for streaming, like for us, if we were streaming, our films would have to go through those companies, And
yeah,
so
that'd be rough.
we'd be making that kind of peanuts, yeah.
Yeah, that's the same way with like music and stuff too. Like if your shit's on Spotify, like I got like 3 albums on Spotify from my heavy metal band I was in, and I also have one up there from a synth band that I'm doing now by myself, like some soundtracky type shit. But yeah, you get, I think it's like 0.5 cents or some shit per stream. Like, yeah, you might get like $1 at the end of the year or something, from Spotify.
Yeah, that's exactly the way film was going. And there were some people that did say it near the start. They were like, don't be surprised if film goes to Spotify. But a lot of people, and even myself, were a little bit skeptical because we're like, oh, but films are so much more expensive. But nope, there is like, there's a YouTube channel, right, called, it's owned by ITN Distribution that do a lot of micro-budget, cheesy horror movies. But they bought our old YouTube channel years ago, about 2 years ago. Let me see. It's called V Horror, right? So So yeah, we used to have a YouTube channel that did the Owlman prank videos, which we made to promote our films, but we had to sell it because YouTube was taking our pranks off. This was about 2 years ago. They would be fine now, but back then they were like, "Nah, we're going to close your channel." So I was like, "Well, screw that." So we took the content off and we sold it, and ITN bought it. So they bought a channel with a whole bunch of subs, right? And then they start putting horror movies on it because they aggregate loads of horror movies. So if you go to V Horror, it sounds like a plug for this place. It's not, but like if you look, you'll see like every day or every 2 days is a new micro budget horror movie. That means they must be distributing on YouTube like about 180 or 150 films a year at the moment. So that's why film is the same as Spotify now. Loads of people make films now, just like loads of people make music. And with horror films, low budget horror films, there's such a glut in the market that they're just not worth much. Now V-Horror just piles them up on YouTube. Like that's actually their royalty revenue making strategy for these films. Store them on YouTube. And a lot more companies are doing the same. Like 5-10 years ago, if someone said, yeah, when you've done your film, as part of our distribution strategy, we're going to put it on YouTube, you'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, not now. Now it's just done. Because YouTube ad revenue is about the same as Amazon's prime streaming.
Wow. It's insanity. And I remember the first time Netflix started doing their streaming stuff, you got the little disc in the mail that you threw on your, like, I was using the PlayStation to stream Netflix. When they first started streaming, they give you a disc and you throw it in there. I'm like, oh, this is going to be pretty cool. You know, this is right before Blockbuster closed down and all those video stores went down. So, oh, this would be cool. I can rent movies, you know, off of here and stuff. And also, you know, go down to Blockbuster and rent those on like a Friday or something. And yeah, what did I know? That was like the start of the fucking end, right?
That's right. Yeah. As soon as stores were not the primary means of consuming films, especially in transferable like physical media, then that was it. It was monopolized by just a tiny handful of high tech, super tech, you know, companies, and that's why medium to smaller distributors are going bust. And they're just delaying going bust by screwing filmmakers over more and more and more until eventually they can't tighten the belts and they collapse. And at the moment, that's something that I've seen happening, but it's something that I kind of suspected would happen. And it's why Hex, our horror production company, and even the British Horror Studio, which is like a much broader, ambitious evolution of the idea, looks to create its own ecosystem in which to create films with people that share the passion for those films with a focus on sustainability, rather than trying to win at the roulette table that they've set up, you know?
Yeah.
You know,
that's definitely cool, man. And yeah, I totally back that 100%. Yeah, I'm going to help you spread the word on this. I've been doing a lot of retweeting and stuff, but I'm going to join the Facebook group as well and stuff like that to try to help out as best I can.
No, I really appreciate that, you know. It's funny, I had a lecturer once at college, and he told me, if you want to see the future of film, always look at porn. You know, I was like,
that's true.
Like, always look at porn. But you look at like OnlyFans and things like that. Of course, Patreon as well. But like the way that pornography fell from being produced by, I mean, it's still, you know, a huge amount produced by a few studios based in probably in LA, I think. But like now, the diversification and decentralization of content production in porn. And for example, OnlyFans and all those companies, which is worth over $1 billion now, it's the portent for what could be a positive alternative for film. But because porn is untouchable, there's been less super high level corporate competition within that field. You know, like you're not going to see Apple try to monopolize the porn market or, you know, Amazon. But for film, it has. But that model that does exist in porn, in amateur porn. Sounds terrible. Where am I going with this? Is a positive teacher for independent film companies as well, especially with strong social media as well, building communities and hubs of folks that share the passion. As they most certainly do for some folks.
I totally get that. Yeah, that's very true. You know, like definitely. I also wanted to talk to you, man, about something else that I think is really fucking cool. I'm a big fan of Conan the Barbarian, Red Sonja, those type films, and I know you're doing one, the Slave and the Sorcerer.
Oh man, yeah. Well,
yeah, I'm way down with that.
Thank you, and I'm a massive fan of that. You see, some folks, if they were to watch my horror films like Lord of Tears, would think, okay, Lawrie probably dresses in a three-piece tweed suit with spectacles and stares into a roaring fire, contemplating. And that's true for a large part of me. But there's also the other part of me, which is a huge fan of the kind of films produced by New World Pictures and Canon as well. So, when I say like the kind of the B movie, I don't mean that I like them in this kind of postmodern hipster, ironic, laughing at it sort of way. I just like them because they're fucking badass,
Right.
Like awesome action films, awesome gritty stuff. It's like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, cool. I've had fun with them as well. But so we have a film like Conan the Barbarian. That's just a work of art. It's definitely a different world from, say, Canon and the Barbarians. And I wouldn't even want to attempt to try and match the genius of like Joe Milius and with like that.
Right.
I'm not going to the budget for that. But I'm a massive fan of films like the Death Stalker, The Beastmaster, and of course the Sword and the Sorcerer as well. As well. And I was like, you know what? We've got the resources to make a film in the spirit of those sword and sorcery films. And The Slave and the Sorcerer is our tribute to Albert as well, the director of The Sword and the Sorcerer. And when I was when we were shooting it, I remember I had one of our camera ops, Gavin Robertson. After a take, he just started to kind of giggle a bit, and he was kind of losing it a bit. Maybe it was the long day, and I was like, "Are you okay? What is it?" And he said, "It's like you're making an 80s sword and sorcery movie." And I was like, "Right, but there's without a shred of irony." I can't believe it. This is happening. It's like, without a shred of irony. I was like, yeah. Because why bother? Why do that? Yeah, I mean, let's make something earnest and outrageous. If it's campy, sure, let it be campy because of the sum of its parts. Let's not make it showy, like, oh, we're trying to be funny. Like, fuck that. Yeah, I mean, let's just do our best with these outrageous, ambitious ideas with limited resources and make something with hand on heart, outrageous, gory action stuff with, one-liners and whatnot. I mean, I am in the film myself as Arlo the Torturer, where I'm like basically semi-naked guy in leather gladiatorial skirt with loads of fake tan, speaking in an outrageous quasi-Australian Cockney accent that is my tribute to Vernon Wells from Commando, where he plays the character Bennett.
Right.
Well, my scene with the hero in The Slave and the Sorcerer is almost the perfect recreation of Bennett's confrontation with Arnie in Commando.
Nice.
With all the same strange sexual overtones. It's just it's awesome. So that was a film that we made because we had done another fantasy film before called Dragon Knight, and I wasn't happy with it, to be honest. This was a film that we'd done as a production services gig for another company. So sometimes what we do with Hex, we will do films for other people, with them, basically funding them. And there's lots that I'm proud about with the film, and they were happy with it, and it made them plenty of money as well. But it was just too vanilla, and it was like the kind of thing that would be like pleasant but not memorable. And when you make, for them at least, and for me, I was like, I want my films to be more memorable. And so with The Slave and The Sorcerer, it's a little bit like it's like a mea culpa for that. It was to kind of say, look, this is what burns in my soul when I think of fantasy and sword and sorcery especially. And I'm really proud of it as well. Like, this one really hits home. It's got moobs, it's got boobs, it's got exploding heads, it's got creatures, and gory fights and one-liners and lots of orange light, fake tan, and baby oil, and a cool score as well, cool music score. And it's like, yeah, like, it's got some. It is pure metal. It's awesome. Not even because of me, but just because of the passion and the enthusiasm everyone threw into it. And Megan Tremethick as well.
Yeah.
She's one of our rising stars at Hex as well. Which definitely for your listeners is worth checking out on Instagram and on Twitter. She's been kind of the female lead of recent, and she's like 25. I think she's 25, and she'd seen films like Deathstalker and Beastmaster or Conan only relatively recently, like in the last couple of years or so. And she was watching them, and she was like, "Why don't they make films like this anymore? This is awesome! Like, I want to be in films like this." And I was like, "I will make your dream come true."
That's great.
And so she's like this sexy sorceress, It's like, oh, here's a young woman that wants to be sexy and is allowed to be sexy and allowed to be in an outrageous, sword and sorcery B movie. Like, all these things that are supposedly not allowed, inverted commas. It's like, no, people want not only to watch this stuff, they want to make this stuff and have fun. So there's a side to my filmmaking that is like that. Let's call it the canon side. And we'll see that with hopefully more sword and sorcery films, including a sequel, which is The Slave and the General, that we hope to produce next year. But we'll sometimes see it in other films as well that would hark back to an era where you just want to see simpler action themes that aren't perhaps trying to sell you a worldview, but want to show you an exploding head. a nice wholesome exploding head. We have several exploding heads in The Slave and the Sorcerer.
That's always a plus in my book.
Yeah, we put too much explosives in the first head, though. That was a terrifying take. But then we got it right afterwards.
That's great. And like, yeah, it's like total escapism, like taking you back to what, fantasy was all about. Like, we haven't had a film like that since forever, like 20, 30 years, maybe. It's been so long since we actually had like a true, like, Robert E. Howard type, fantasy film, that, that type of stuff. Conan, it's just been so long.
You're totally right. It's an interesting one, actually. Like, I mean, I'm relatively nerdy, and when it comes to fantasy, I enjoy the genre, and in particular, I enjoyed sword and sorcery and the stories of Robert E. Howard, and its unpopularity, at least in pop culture, I think has largely stemmed over the political, cultural ideas that are associated with that, which are basically muscular men slaughtering lots of men, sexy women, and it being quite unapologetically
Right.
sensual and violent. Of course, that those are also the reasons that we like those films or stories. It's also,
Right.
and it's not. This the themes largely shared by many spaghetti westerns as well. Any of these things that have this kind of imposing anti-hero, um, and as escapist. A lot of fantasy films or even fantasy ideas, I feel like they fetishize the small nerdy details to the point where the kind of broader heroism, sexiness, and those kind of more, let's say, base themes, as they might be considered, are ignored. So you'll have these kind of richly detailed but very hollow dead kind of vanilla enterprises. Like, for example, if we like, and you might disagree with me on this, but if you take, for example, Amazon's Rings of Power, it had the entire wealth of Tolkien's imagination pretty much at its disposal, and they created something so plain and forgettable.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
But if you had the barbarian lady with 3 boobs or a man's head explodes, you remember that. That's what sword and sorcery can give.
Yeah, you definitely remember that. And also too with the Amazon Lord of the Rings, man, I don't like you said, it was really vanilla and just like there's no edge whatsoever to it. Like compared to like the films, like the Lord of the Rings films, they're so fucking memorable. And they're brutal. There's just something about the new Lord of the Rings. I'm not saying it was totally super bad because I did enjoy a few episodes, but it just didn't really ever like grab me. You know what I mean? It was lacking like edge to it.
I mean, the original Lord of the Rings films for me were successful because they understood, perhaps through all the long period of pre-production and development, what made those books so special for people. The kind of themes, the underlying ideas, and they're timeless. Those positive lessons, the power of friendship and all these, and all those kind of things, and so they're accessible. Like during the worst period of the pandemic in the UK, it was Lord of the Rings films that were peaking on Netflix. People were in droves. Weirdly enough, I remember in the papers going to watch those films again, and because there was something reassuring and heroic, and what felt like for them the darkest times, that was their cinematic message of hope that they were going to, and that's a beautiful testimony to what the fantasy genre can achieve. That in darkest times, it might have a story of hope, that one could cherish and come back to. And then you look at Rings of Power and you think, like, would that be the source of comfort or hope for people to watch at a time when the society was scared, say in 1520s? No, I don't think so. I think as well, like, and it's not to get too political, but because the streaming giants understand that algorithms and online traffic based on the topics of conversation are the primary drivers of audiences and viewership, then they want to take those talking points and make them a part of whatever content they're making. And so you end up having fantasy series or any series reflecting very much those topics of present day political, cultural discourse. And the unfortunate penalty for any person looking for escapism is that they don't get it.
No.
They'll see the same points of discourse, argument, or whatever among the characters they're watching. Issues that feel very present day, and there's no escapism.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. If I'm watching fantasy or anything like that, I don't want to think about all the crazy shit that goes on in real life right now. I want to be the furthest away from all that, I don't want to like see all that going on in my like fantasy movie I'm watching or series. Like, get me away from that for a little bit. Give me a break from this like reality of hell that we live in. You know what I mean? Like,
I know, and yet for the streaming giants, they look and they think that's what's trending. Our content will complement what's trending, and then will become part of the conversation, as they describe it. And if they get more hits, more clicks, more money for their advertisers, then that's all they care about. And it's like some filmmakers I know, and it was recently in an interview that was put out, talking about how even the way they were having to make films and write them and direct them were based on algorithms that would determine exciting things having to happen. If this type of primary age demographic and gender demographic are watching this kind of film, then at the 8-minute mark, we'll lose 50% of the audience. So we need something exciting to happen at 8 minutes, but then something at 12. And then this weird way of deconstructing and reconstructing films based on algorithm analytics and not on art at all is, it's a troubling thing, actually. And it probably is actually the biggest threat to cinema or just filmmaking, actually, is the takeover of analytics and algorithms for how these projects are constructed now.
Yeah, that's totally a big threat, and it's only going to get worse, unfortunately. As we increase our AI power and all that stuff, and algorithm power, it's only going to get worse. Like, hell, you go to Facebook, or you're just Googling something, then Instagram and Facebook have ads for that. Or say if I'm talking about something right now, my phone's going to have an ad for whatever we're fucking talking about. It's scary,
Well, it's funny, but when you think of a film or a TV show, but especially films, if they're made for a streaming platform, let's say a genuine Netflix original or an Amazon, they always have a kind of a vibe, a feeling, even sometimes an appearance that makes them feel like they're of that world. It's hard to describe, but it's a bit how anything you could pick at McDonald's will in some way taste a bit like McDonald's. It'll have the aroma of McDonald's.
Right.
Then that's what the streaming only content is like. Doesn't matter who the director, Ben Wheatley, for example, a director that whose films Field in England, for example, that I really enjoy as well, and Kill List. That was the name.
Oh, Kill List was fucking great, yeah.
Right, and then look what Netflix did to him when he was directing Rebecca.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it gets that Netflix flavor to it. Everything that Netflix produces on their own has this look to it, and it has a flavor, just like you're saying with the whole McDonald's thing. It doesn't matter who's directing it. It's coming from Netflix because it has that look to it. And
it's weird. It's it's not that they're necessarily terrible, but they're always middling, bland, shiny, and pretty. Not too much this, not too much that with them. But you could marvel at the creative mind behind Kill List and think wow, what a filmmaker, what interesting ideas. But you wouldn't marvel at the creative mind behind Rebecca. You would just feel Ben Wheatley was fighting a committee of Netflix execs. And to be fair, I kind of know that anyway, because I have friends that work and produce content with streaming giants, and they're always bitching and moaning about things that are taken out of their purview. It happens even in indie film plenty of times if those projects are funded by other companies or co-produced. But God knows what it's like if you're brought in just to direct something for Netflix, and they're hiring their own cast and their own production services company.
Yeah, it's weird, man. It's strange, and that's why I try to support Shudder, Screenbox, Arrow app. I try to support them as much as I can. I know Shudder is owned by AMC, but still, when it comes to Shudder originals and stuff, they still have a different feel to them. It doesn't feel oh, this is a Shudder movie. No, it feels like whatever the director was going for or the writer or not. So it still feels like their own stuff.
I think with Shudder, Shudder is a positive thing. Sam Zimmerman, I think, is still running the show there. I think. downsized considerably to the best of my knowledge, and it's effectively almost like a system of horror welfare for LA-based genre artists.
Right.
But like, there's some bitching one could do about that. But if you were to kind of be like, oh, I'd rather it wasn't there, you'd be a fool, because Shudder is doing great stuff at maintaining an independent horror film presence. It's not perfect.
No.
Some folks at Shudder are completely up themselves, and other folks are awesome. But if it goes under, that would be a really unfortunate, crippling blow, because it brings a lot of new audiences to horror, and especially the horror community. You know, it has this vibe. And obviously, you've got Joe there as well. So
yeah, Joe Bob's like huge for them, and it helped like with his like resurrection. You know, Darcy helped out big time with that as well. But having Shudder host it and really get Joe Bob out there to a newer audience is fucking great. You know, and he's like bigger than ever.
Exactly. So Shudder does a lot of good things. It's not perfect. I don't think it is, but it's a force. It's generally a force for good. I hope it survives any challenges it does and continues to grow. And Joe is, he's definitely like, just to me, a hero in the horror genre, doing great stuff and encouraging a lot of people. He said lovely things to us as well, and he didn't have to, but he did. Awesome. And as for Darcy, it would be so cool if we could work with her in future and perhaps get her involved in the Sword and Sorcery sequel film. I think that would be really badass.
That would be totally badass, and I'm sure that's up her alley too. I bet she would totally do it. She probably gets bombarded with like millions of emails and tags on, the social media stuff, because that's what she does. Like for the most part, she's like out there like just killing it with social media stuff, and then she writes for Fangoria as well and stuff like that. But I think that role there would be fucking perfect.
Oh yeah, no, it'd be totally cool, and they're great together. So you got that, and of course there's Screenbox as well. Some of our films are on Screenbox as well. And yeah, Brad Miska, Bloody Disgusting. I think him and some other folks they're all kind of behind that. And yeah, good luck to them. I think those platforms that have the least overheads, that can streamline, they've got the best chance of surviving, because the horror market and the independent film market isn't as big as we like to think it is. I think that's the big problem that we all face, really, as filmmakers and as distributors. And it is a challenge because it does affect the production of new films and the promotion of new creative voices, but it's possible.
Yeah, most definitely. So where would my listeners and myself be able to like purchase The Slave and the Sorcerer, like any physical copies of Lord of Tears, stuff like that? Like where could we get all this stuff from?
Just go in the back of my old rusty van.
As long as you got candy, I'm sure it's fine.
Well, right now we actually have a Kickstarter. Let's call it a Kickstarter stretch campaign. It gives it an extra veneer of credibility to call it that. Basically, we did a Kickstarter campaign to raise funds for The Slave and the Sorcerer, and it did well, and that was freaking awesome. But we did have a lot of people be like, hey man, can I still get the VHS? Can I still get the Blu-ray? And I was like, of course you can. I spoke to Kickstarter, and they were like, yeah, you could do a small campaign for one of the stretch goals, which was to get a horror name in our film, and just to make the movie even better. And they were like cool with that. So we've set up a new campaign with a smaller goal, and everyone that would like to check out The Slave and the Sorcerer and pre-order a Blu-ray or VHS or a digital pack can go to it right now. It's called The Slave and the Sorcerer - Sword and Sorcery Horror Movie. And you might find the old campaign, but yeah, you probably find a new one. And folks can back that at the moment. And in terms of like getting any of our other stuff, you just need to go to w.hexstudios.shop. Um, I'm also approachable, like on Twitter and Facebook. I'd love if folks followed me on that, because if they share an interest in what we're trying to do, then we need to be able to connect with people that want to be on board with what we're doing. And the BritishHorrorStudio.com Facebook group, and the website with the same name for signing up for our old-timey newsletter that we do once a month.
That's killer. Yeah, I'm hoping like my listeners check out all this, and I need to get on that Kickstarter for I can get me a copy of the sword and sorcery film there. I gotta have that for my collection. I didn't know if it was out already. I know you were doing a Kickstarter, so I remember sharing that for you, but I didn't know if you're doing like more goals now. And that VHS does look really awesome. I'm a VHS collector. I'm not a crazy VHS collector, but I do have a lot of special edition VHS stuff that I won't even touch. I just have it there as like art. You know what I mean?
Good. That's exactly it. Like all the physical stuff that we do is about the artwork. It's about having this beautiful, interesting object that you could enjoy in your collection. And I know it because I'm the same. I've got like a wee collection of magic cherished things. With the VHS, I was like, you know what? This is where my journey began when I fell in love with films. It was going to the VHS store and seeing like the horror rental collection. Big posters of things like The Stuff and The Evil Dead were like, whoa, what is this? Taking this chunky case and being like, Mom, can I rent this? And getting told, no, here's an American Tail instead. But like, yeah, with the VHS, we're making it fun. We're including, so it'll have a VHS version of the film, like in 4:3 with different end credits that will include the names of folks that have pre-ordered VHSs. So they're going to get a cool version, but it'll also, any of the physicals also come with our digital normal version, so it's not like you get the VHS and then you lose out on just having a good regular digital download. So like you get the works, whether you go for Blu-ray or VHS.
That's killer, yeah. Because right now I have like 6 or 7 different editions of Mandy on VHS. That's my favorite film, and I won't put that in my VHS player because if that shit ate that VHS, I'm gonna fucking die. You know what I mean? So I just have them really just for the artwork and just to be able to hold the VHS in my hand, like that nostalgia feeling.
Yeah, no, that especially it's funny, but when you make a film, it's so much work that if it was just a digital file, like a thumbnail on Amazon, man, it would feel shit. It barely feel worthwhile. But when you have badass artwork and something you can hold in your hands, then it feels like you've actually made something, So I can appreciate that as not just as a maker of films, but when I enjoy a film, I want to have a physical copy. I want it to feel like an old tome in my occult library,
It's something we can leave behind after we're gone, You can't leave a fucking file behind or some shit. Most likely that's just gonna be corrupted in like 20 years or something. So,
No, exactly. And yeah, Mandy's a kick-ass movie, so it's good to have a few copies of that. Linus Roach in that, just like amazing. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Like his dad is just he's been playing the same character in a TV soap for about, I think, gosh, is he still alive? He might possibly recently, for like about 50, 60 years. And it was just like, oh, but his son's an actor as well. And he's a total badass actor. Amazing in Mandy and also amazing in the TV series Vikings as well.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He is in Vikings. Yeah, he's great in that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, really cool. You would never guess it was the same guy. Like, it's just totally wild.
Yeah, he makes a hell of a villain, that's for sure.
Oh, I'd love to work with Linus Roach. It'd be great.
He would be good for a sword and sorcery film, definitely.
Like he'd be great, and he's one of the few guys that would just be great in anything. Like he would throw himself into sword and sorcery character, or you could do this like classy gothic horror with him, and he would not be out of place. He's that kind of talent.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. He's very versatile and stuff. That'd be cool if he gets to work with you one day. I'm way down with that.
if you just pledge for 100 of the exec producer credit,
Yeah, there you go.
like 8 minutes of your name scrolling on the screen, and you could have mined us in every film we make till the end of time. Yeah.
You never know.
I mean, I've been a bit like we've been a bit stingy with names, to be honest, with our horror films in general, but we shouldn't be. Like,
Right.
and with our latest film, Black Chariot, it's like a horror film noir, black and white. It's all centered around basically a cursed, a kind of cursed car, you could say. It's a bit like if you imagine a 1950s black and white British Christine. It's a little bit like that. But we had Lawrence R. Harvey from Human Centipede out, and he was just rocking it, you know, as this like twisted, manipulative banker on the run. The whole film is based on this car breaking down with these guys that are on the run, and they get stuck together, and they got to kind of, you know, sort shit out. You know, where's the money? But you know, there's a ghost involved as well. So like, Lawrence Harvey was just brilliant in that, and I'm looking forward to making more films with Lawrence and just with other folks that have been in horror movies, including films we would know and love from like the 80s as well. Don't think I can afford Robert Englund though, but you know.
If you ever get Nick Cage in something, holy shit, you know what I mean? Like he's on like a resurgence of like doing a ton of shit right now, and a lot of really good stuff too. Like Nick Cage has been killing it lately.
Oh, like mad props to Nick Cage. Like, so you watch him, you know you're going to be entertained in some way or other. Like honestly, I mean, I've worked with like names before. Like as a freelance producer, I worked with like Malcolm McDowell from Clockwork Orange, you know, Lance Henriksen, folks like that. And producers that always kind of bandying about in their heads, you know, how much do you think this person would cost for a week, you know, like which would be like 4 working days or for a name. But like, and with Nicolas Cage, like it could be like $75,000 or it could be like 200,000, you know, depending on the budget of the film. If it was like an indie horror film and he really, really liked it, then he would maybe do it for like, you know, under 100,000. If he didn't know you, but he really liked the material, but thought you could do it, then maybe. But that's a lot of money. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, because you can tell from our crowdfunders, you know, like that's more than what we're even raising, you know. But it's possible if you're packaging a film from the start with someone like him, if he's interested in the script, gives you a letter of engagement, then you can take it to funders, investors, and all that. And so it's possible. With other names, I mean, they're a bit cheaper, you know. Folks that, you know, have played monsters in like films and things like that. But like Nicolas Cage, he's like, yeah, he was big. Like, geez, man, even like, I remember he was like, it was like $300,000-400,000. Like, well, not for a week, for 2 weeks, like about 9 years ago. We checked him out, not for a horror film, but for a totally different project that I was being hired to work on. Yeah, but you never know; it always changes. Do you know what I mean? Because folks, yeah, I mean, their interest in what projects they do changes, and obviously if they've had hits, they go up, and if they've had a tough time, they've gone down. But the kind of resurrection of Nick Cage over the last like 10 years, 8 years, I'm delighted with that. I always loved him. So
yeah, he's been my favorite since the 90s, and you know he's still one of my favorite actors now. Like Nick Cage is Nick Cage. Like you get what you get with him, and either it's really, really awesome or, you know, it's kind of odd, you know, weird, but both are really cool to me. You know, like I just like Nick Cage. I think he's fucking great. So
now he's working a lot more with filmmakers that are engaged with his personality and his shtick, you know, what he does. And we're just getting great art from it. But he's actually comfortable playing all kinds of interesting, weird characters. He could be a llama farmer. Like in like
in color space or whatever,
yeah, or janitor in a theme park when the creatures come. I mean, all that stuff doesn't matter. Like he can do it, you know, whatever it is, he can do it.
And he didn't even say a word in Willy's Wonderland. I was talking about this on another episode of the podcast. How like he said nothing in that movie, and that movie's so fucking good. I love Willy's Wonderland or whatever, with the animatronics and stuff. I have that on a special edition VHS as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Right. Well, I have not seen it yet. I've seen the trailer, but I will put it to the watch list.
Oh yeah, you definitely do. Like it kind of got shoved under the radar, like because I think when it came out, I think the pandemic just started, and it just kind of got like everybody just kind of forgot about it. But I didn't. I checked it out and I fucking loved it, and I've been like trying to spread the good word for it ever since. So I think it's a great movie, especially if you were, like around our age and stuff growing up, and you got like a Chuck E. Cheese or like those amusement places you go to where they have like the animatronic fucking band playing that would like traumatize you as a kid like they did me, those movies definitely hit differently.
Oh man, I mean, like, gosh, if I could work with anyone right now at sea, I would probably. I would never be able to afford to work but Donald Sutherland is someone that I've always loved.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
And we did nearly work with him, but not on a horror film, about 10 years ago. But like he blows my mind. Now, someone we nearly worked with, right? So actually, God, I can't believe I not told you this. If you like Lord of Tears, so David Schofield is our voice actor in Lord of Tears for the Owlman.
Oh right.
He's an American Werewolf in London and Gladiator and Pirates of the
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean. Always is a kind of bad guy. And he's a great classic actor. But originally, though, we actually did have Christopher Lee express an interest in doing it.
Wow.
And it was like, I say expressed an interest. I mean, his agent, and then when Christopher Lee saw the material, didn't instantly say no and was like, okay, let's think about it. And I was like, please, God, please. But then he at the time was very old, and obviously his health was coming and going, and so it was like at the moment he's just not doing any work for a few months. It's like oh God, I've got to deliver this film. No. So we weren't able to make that happen, Christopher Lee. That would have been like a dream come true because he's my hero, and there was Tim Curry as well. That nearly happened, but he was a bit out of our budget. I think that was before he unfortunately had his health challenges, although he's kind of been climbing back a bit from that. But yeah, I mean, brilliant actors. Yeah, okay. I guess a lot of my heroes are dead as well.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the older we get, the more is gonna die.
Yeah,
like I was watching that new Arnold documentary, man, that's on Netflix, and it's like, God, Arnold's fucking old. Like, how did he get so old so fast? Like watch him in like Last Action Hero. So I'm like, yeah, that is my fucking hero. I love Arnold, and now you see him, he's like, he's getting up there. He is up there, It's like it's scary because I'm like, once he goes and like Sylvester Stallone goes, Bruce Willis, all these like heroes of mine growing up, it's gonna be pretty fucking weird.
Dude, you're 100% right. Like we're kind of lucky in a way. Like even folks like Clint Eastwood, like he's still kicking about. That means he's like an anchor to our mortality. It's like he's like, we're not so old if Clint Eastwood's still making movies and shit,
Right.
But like when Clint goes, Arnie goes, then we're just floating in space, man. Then we're screwed.
Yeah, it's gonna be a weird fucking world when that does happen, and it's gonna be happening sooner than we think, probably. I mean, what Arnold's 80 now, Clint Eastwood's like 90 or 90 something. He's up there. He's like almost 100 years old.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Clint Eastwood's someone I would love to work with. I mean, obviously Arnie. Like, I mean, these guys are absolutely amazing. In fact, actually, Megan, who works with the Megan Dramatic, it was fun introducing her to all the spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood, and Dirty Harry as well, the original one that also has Andrew Robinson as the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
She was just like absolutely loving those films, like, and just being like, why? She said to me, right, why are male actors not like this anymore? Why is there not characters like this anymore? Like as if it was like just an alien type of character to see somebody like the Man with No Name or Harry, And I was like, I was like, I don't know, because they're not allowed. I thought it was so strange. Like, you want to see more of this, you know? And
Yeah.
even like, she was even getting into films like, like James Coburn, The Cross of Iron, that Sam Peckinpah directed. And I was just like, man, like that's the kind of escapist fun for men that are also enjoyed by women, and even like an intelligent, beautiful young woman. It's such a shame. I've digressed a little bit there, Brandon.
Oh, it's all stuff I love, so it's cool. Like, yeah. And also the best Western ever made, in my opinion, were one of them now. There's two of them tied for me, but one of them is High Plains Drifter and Tombstone. Those are like two of the best ever made.
Yeah, those are excellent. Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, say what you like about Val Kilmer, of course, but I think anyone and everyone can agree that like he knocked it out of the park with Doc Holliday. That was just magic. And obviously, Kurt Russell just always, kicks ass.
Yeah, that whole cast in Tombstone, they were all just so fucking good. I mean, you can't. There's not a bad cast member in that, you know.
Yeah, and High Plains Drifter as well is just just great, just brutal, magical, strange, kind of gothic, almost gothic horror kind of western. It's just great.
Yeah, it has the whole gunslinger thing from the Dark Tower series of Stephen King, like High Plains Drifter. That feels just like that's the gunslinger there to me. And I always see Clint Eastwood as a gunslinger. I don't know if you ever read the Dark Tower series, but to me that's Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, do you think he maybe even inspired Stephen King? Maybe.
I'm not sure when the first book came out. Like, the Gunslinger was the first book in the Dark Tower series. And I don't know if it was around the same time, because I think High Plains Drifter was 1974. So I'm pretty sure Clint Eastwood in that role probably inspired Stephen King, because I think that came out a little bit before the first book came out.
Yeah. Just thinking there's another one as well. Let's see, what's it called? Red, that you might like. No, you're right. Yeah, 1973. You know what? For some reason in my head, I had it down as like late 60s. That film. For a second, I was like thinking, oh, it's High Plains Drifter, or were you thinking of the other one? But no, this one. Yeah, masterpiece. Yeah, Gothic horror. Yeah, you're right. That might have come after Stephen King. But what a cool movie, though, eh?
Oh yeah, totally. And yeah, those Clint Eastwood westerns they were the best. And besides Tombstone, when Tombstone came out, like that was a whole different thing. It's that set its own mark with all those great actors in there, and Val Kilmer kicks ass. So
Yeah, no, it totally does. The horror aspect of High Plains Drifter, when you see the crowd watching this person being murdered in the street and not doing anything, almost like accomplices with this like twisted kind of music and sound design, everything like that. It's a very much an American Gothic kind of horror film and Western. It's a little masterpiece, that one, High Plains Drifter. Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, 10 out of 10. I would grade that one a 10 out of 10 for sure. The ultimate like Western Gothic like revenge story.
I feel like when I'm not making films, I'm always trying to show older films to younger people. And it's just because, like, let's say, right, take High Plains Drifter, right, which many people wouldn't argue is the best spaghetti western. Well, it's not a spaghetti western, but it would, it's amazing. But there'd be folks who'd be like, oh, it's a good, the bad, and ugly, or A Few Dollars More, or there's quite a few to choose from, right? And they all got produced within the space of basically like almost 15 years.
Right.
And you could go back 30 years, or let's say even like 10 years, and be like, what's been made that's comparable to these films? And there's like a handful. There's probably about 10 great westerns you could pick from just that era, and that's not even the 50s or
Right.
when folks were banging on about the great westerns like The Searchers and stuff like that. But man, I'm like, what would Amazon give me or Netflix give me in terms of westerns in the next, if you give it even 20 years, based on the way they're making films? they could probably have 100 years and they would struggle to come up with as many that were made ostensibly on lower budgets in Italy, over a period of 10 years.
Right. There's probably gonna be like maybe two or three to come out in that time period, and probably not gonna be very good. But I think that's kind of an untapped market too, because there's a lot of people that want that old school like Western feel, good versus evil, like throwing some like supernatural elements, like with High Plains Drifter and stuff, and
Well, it's interesting because, I work with a lot of. I'm 42. I work with a lot of young people that are just coming from the college as well. And it's awesome, to get them involved because I love seeing their passion for filmmaking. But for a lot of them, it's only natural because they're young. They haven't seen that many films, but of those films they have seen, they'll mostly be just things that are very much on the curve of present day pop culture, because that's
right.
They've been hit with a tsunami of billion-dollar marketing and advertising. It doesn't matter what you think might be a good film from 1976. You've got a billion-dollar corporation with algorithms and everything targeting you. So you're going to watch shit that's getting made by Amazon or something before you never go back to say 1973 for the High Plains. So it's like they've hardly seen cinema, but when they want to make films, there's a cognitive dissonance that a lot of young folks have where they're looking at the stuff they consume in the present and they're trying to draw from it ideas for what they could make. But because they're so lacking in substance, these programs often and films, that they're at a loss. Mm-hmm. And it's actually when they're often introduced to a classic film or something that they're like, oh, wow, that's so much better. Where was this? To actually learn how to make films or and everything like that. And it's like, shit, I just worry that what years and years of consumption of all this crap is literally going to do, not just to folks that want to make films, but to consumers. It's a bit like, Futurama, where you had the Astro Frog.
Oh, yeah.
That's like Amazon's, Netflix's ultimate plan. Oh.
It's like The Simpsons and Futurama predict everything that happens to us, it seems like. So, yeah. Futurama's going to be further out, but it's going to be here eventually. Whatever happens there. Simpsons are predicting shit that's already happened and about to happen, so.
I tell you, man, and because the kind of, let's call it algorithm art, right, is so fixated with preventing you from being bored, right, or patient or anything, it's just constant stimulation. So for a lot of young folks that I know, at first they can struggle to watch an old film. It's like they're having to go cold turkey on the stimuli, almost like Amazon and Netflix and all those sorts are trying to give us all some form of ADHD,
Oh, yeah.
We're just jittery, constantly on the jump. Same with YouTube as well. So you watch a film that's got the kind of the pace and energy of life that might have been in the 70s for a film. So folks would watch The Godfather. You try getting a 17 or 18-year-old to watch something like that or anything.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to do. But and for some of those that do enjoy those films now and are researching more, the first few that they watched, it was really hard. It was like I was literally forcing them to go cold turkey. They'd be jittery. They'd be desperate to reach for their phone because 5 minutes had passed without some random spectacle, and it was just holy shit, what are we doing to people?
Yeah, and I even feel that myself. I'm 38, but with cell phones and stuff, you got so much shit right there at your fingertips. You're trying to watch a movie, oh, there's a slight boring part there. Let me check and see if I got a message, or let me check my messages. And I got to stop myself. I'm like, no, dude, I need to fucking watch this movie. chill. But it's hard, and I didn't grow up like that, of course, but I feel for these kids now. It's all thrown in their face, and they're brought up that way with all this technology and stuff, and it's yeah, it's nuts.
No, yeah, you're totally right. And I like yourself, suffered those challenges. But Christ knows what it would be like being born into that world. That's what they've got, stacked against them, the resources of billion dollar corporation. It's like, geez, it's tough. So the art of film and indie film, by which I include indie horror and everything like that, it needs to think about, for those anyway that liked making films and things within that realm, they actually have to think about the preservation of that entire medium, not just the film they're making. They have to think about what they're going to do to try and preserve and cultivate film watching culture, because it's being deconstructed at the moment by streaming platforms who don't have any reason for a film to be 80 minutes and 70 minutes, 2 hours. Like, they just need it, people on the platform.
Yeah, it's totally wild, man. Like, the future is going to get weirder. I assure you that.
And I guess in that sense, the British Horror Studio is a bit like a kind of reactionary thing to that. It's kind of like carving a bubble and saying, you know what, if you want a break from all that, just a break, because we all enjoy it. I'm bitching about Netflix and Amazon, but I use Netflix and Amazon,
Right.
But to have a break from it and you sort of step away just for a while, then we want to create this environment, with this project, this creative, artistic filmmaking and audience environment that lets us appreciate a retro style of filmmaking and filmmaking appreciation that seeks to cultivate and preserve what's best in the past, as well as produce works that seek to cultivate and preserve cinema as well, traditional filmmaking and cinema.
Yeah, I think people need to support this and take a break on this other crazy shit with the Netflixes and the Amazon and stuff, and support a really awesome cause here for independent cinema. So
thanks, Brandon.
Well, Lawrie, it's been great talking with you, man. It's been really cool. We should definitely do this again. We should schedule another one for down the line and stuff, and see what else you're working on at that time, or whatever you want to talk about. We talk about anything. So
that would be awesome.
Excellent, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me. And once again, thanks for Hal for hooking us up here. This is fucking great. So thank you, Hal. And I hope you have a good rest of your weekend and a good week and stuff. And yeah.
Thank you, sir. And I shall bid you adieu. Goodbye.
Have a good one.